This is what happens in third world banana republics. Donald Trump hasn't acted like an authoritarian. The political establishment, including with the media, have acted like authoritarians in trying to use every possible means to destroy the president and overturn the election because, well, let's be honest, they hate the outcome. Joining me now to discuss all of this is my friend Horace Cooper, former constitutional law professor at George Mason University, now senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research and the co-chair of Project 21. Horace, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, here's what I don't get. You have Andrew McCabe go on 60 Minutes, right? Then he kind of goes out and publicly retracts or at least tries to amend some of his statements. But then pressed in other interviews, he keeps saying he believed Trump may have been working with the Russians and then goes on to cite the firing of James Comey or some of Trump's tweets. But none of that points to why the investigation was opened in the first place. The tweets and the firing of Comey came months after McCabe was surveilling Trump.
So you got a problem here, and this goes to one of the reasons why J. Edgar Hoover, the last lifetime appointed FBI director, is the last FBI director allowed to serve for life. We've always wanted civilian control over the FBI. Apparently McCabe came to a conclusion that he thought allowed him to invoke a national security investigation, as well as a criminal investigation, as well as a constitutional investigation. These are responsibilities that are way over the pay grade of the deputy director or even the director of the FBI. What's really, really troubling to me is when I see these reports, how little pushback he is getting from reporters asking him whether or not he understood that it wasn't his place to make this judgment call. He makes the recommendation, the people above him answer the question as to whether or not he should proceed. That is completely not what happened here, and it does give credence to those who argue that a deep state is an operation that tries to thwart the ambitions and the aspirations of the American people when they select the leadership of our country.
You know, it's amazing. Even in some of these interviews, he kind of vacillates between collusion and interference with the election. Well, okay, if you're investigating interference with the election, I don't think any of us are surprised that the Russians want to sow chaos in our electoral process. They're the Russians. But that's wholly different than the president or a presidential candidate acting illegally in league with the Russians to do just that.
Again, this investigation needed to have been vetted by actual political appointees in the Obama administration. They needed the former Attorney General to sign off, or her deputy to sign off on this. This idea that they can't even decide, is he in collusion? Is he being manipulated? Is he being blackmailed? All of these are very, very valuable questions. Now, we have what's called the Gang of Eight. Members of the House of Representatives, the leadership on the Democrat and the Republican side, and members of the United States Senate on the Democrat and the Republican side. They give oversight for intelligence activities. If an investigation is going to rise to this level, there clearly should have been briefings that were taking place that would have highlighted this early on. The very fact that this was kept from those individuals is a sign, again, that this was well above the pay grade of one deputy director of the FBI.
All right, let's move into the issue of the 25th Amendment. The story keeps changing. Rosenstein was serious. He was being sarcastic. McCabe has alluded that he was sarcastic, but also serious. We don't know. But this is very exciting to legal analysts on the major networks. I mean, they're all very excited at the prospect of maybe using the 25th Amendment. They've been saying this for quite some time. But You don't have to be a constitutional law professor to know that it's not impeachment. It's not a political vehicle. It was created in the aftermath of the assassination of John F. Kennedy to deal with an incapacitated president, not one who tweets things some people find offensive.
No, absolutely. I am wondering who, McCabe claims to be a lawyer. Comey says he's a lawyer. These individuals claim to have some kind of legal knowledge, but they apparently can't even do just your basic, straightforward analysis of the 25th Amendment. There should never, it's great if you're watching Scandal on CBS or some other television show where they make up scenarios where they're going to invoke the 25th Amendment. But if we're talking about a real bona fide assessment, even a straightforward analysis would have revealed that this is not a political process. It's not a secret process, by the way. It has never been contemplated that you would hide from an incapacitated president or a president that you think might be incapacitated, that you would hide that you are pursuing this. Again, every aspect about this is very, very troubling, and I have to ask myself, what is a deputy director of the FBI doing having conversations about this to start with?
The truth is, and it is kind of morbid. We've had two prominent United States senators over the past decade both die of brain cancer, both of whom ran for president, neither of which won. But let's say we were dealing with either Ted Kennedy, President Ted Kennedy, or President John McCain. If we got to a stage where they were incapable of discharging their office, being commander-in-chief, you would hope, because in the third section of the 25th Amendment allows the president to invoke the 25th Amendment. So if they're being treated for cancer, they're being treated for brain cancer, they may not be able to be there to be president. They would say, okay, the vice president's going to take over. Now, if the cancer was so, they were getting close to the terminal stages and they are no longer capable mentally or physically of discharging the office, that might be a rare moment where the vice president says to the cabinet, all right, we have to continue a functioning government here. The president is incapacitated.
Okay, couple things. You're exactly right. Couple things. Even under the most elaborate political reading possible of the 25th Amendment, one that would actually get you an F in my class, even under that strange, elaborate reading, you have to acknowledge that there is a requirement that 2/3 of the House and the Senate would agree that this determination is being made. Under no definition of this is it contemplated that the deputy, and I keep saying this, a career government official would in some way play any kind of central role. There is no contemplation of non-cabinet members being a part of the invocation of the 25th Amendment. Why have there been no queries on the part of McCabe asking him why he thinks it would in any way be appropriate for him to opine in any way about the 25th Amendment? Is he also opining about vacancies on the Supreme Court and who would be a good fit replacement for Justice Ginsburg if she were to pass in some untimely fashion? These kinds of questions are well outside the lane of the FBI director, and it is troublesome. This is why I said our FBI is supposed to be under civilian control. We don't have lifetime appointments any longer because of these kinds of abuses. Have you seen any of those reporters meeting with McCabe, asking him these questions that go to civilian control and making sure that we understood what his motivations were throughout this entire process?
Now, I had to laugh to the side there, because that's the first time you mentioned possibly me getting an F in your class. You're always giving me gold stars. So I hope my reading wouldn't get me an F.
Not you. Not you.
Oh, someone else.
He'd get an F.
Okay.
He'd get an F for making these kind of approaches that somehow that there was a political calculation that he and the deputy attorney general could sit down and collaborate in some way as a way to invoke it. That would get an F in my class. And yet, have you seen any questions about this?
No.
Have you seen anyone asking about why he's so far out of his lane? Why his approach at the interpretation of the 25th Amendment is so far removed from what you outlined at the very beginning? It's about the exigent circumstances of a sick or dying or even dead President of the United States. That's its purpose, not a purpose about I don't like a person or even a colluding person, whatever that might be, a colluding president, or even a person who is, quote, being directed by a foreign government. None of those scenarios invoke the 25th Amendment. And that's all I was getting at. His idea that that was somehow in play, that would get an F in my class.
All right, I got to leave it there, Horace. Thanks for coming on the program. We'll get you back again soon.
Thanks for having me on.